Finding your frequency, that's the key to marketing. People buy on emotion for logical reasons, and we lose track of that today because everybody wants to talk about how far their reach is and how far their product can go because there's 4.2 billion people they can address as they think with no marketing dollars at all. The truth is that everything vibrates, including your brand. You can only be aware of that which vibrates equal to or less than you. Therefore, you should focus in on the frequency of your brand. So what does that mean? It actually means that content is king. We must focus in on the content of what we are providing. Does it emotionally attach to people? And then give them the logical reasons. It's so important to understand that frequency has three components. The first component is how strong is your signal? How strong is your signal? How far will your brand reach on its own by its value? Two, what is the spectrum of your signal? How many channels? How many different types of people? What demographic does your brand address, align, or can be aware of? And then finally, one that's a mistake of many, is simply what is the clarity of your frequency? So many times there is a discerning message, a differentiating message. People don't connect emotionally with your brand, and we have no chance of monetizing that brand. So you need to focus in on the strength of the signal, the spectrum, as well as the clarity of what you're doing. And once you find that frequency, it doesn't matter how many people you start to address because it will grow on its own. So many people waste their time, money, figuring out some sort of algorithm that is not realistic, and they haven't focused in on the content that they have or the frequency that it carries. So what do we have to do? Number one, you have to be able to capture your content correctly. You need to market it correctly. You have to position it in a place where people can be aware of it, and it will emotionally attach with people. You need to capture it according to what you want to connect to. Then what you need to do is amplify that content. What does that mean? We want to amplify it to as many different channels as we can. And then where it gets really interesting is that most people don't realize the difference today compared to the past is that we can perpetuate our content. Every piece of content that we create, every marketing piece, every piece of collateral, every message, every speech, every customer testimonial, everything that we're capturing is perpetual. And how are we capturing, amplifying, and perpetuating that content for our brand? Because we are creating an annuity with our brand that exponentially grows. What does that mean? That we have the capacity now to accelerate and grow everything that we do. So 25 years ago, a couple days ago, Jeff Bezos started in his garage with a book sale company. And he focused in on acceleration and exponential growth, a frequency of what he did. And that small company in the first 10 years may have been to about 25% of what he thought his company should be. But because he focused on acceleration and growth, it took him 5 more years to get to 50%. 2.5 more years to get to 100%, a year and a quarter to get to 200%, a year, right? And so on and so on. That's how we create a hockey stick with a brand. That's how we create a frequency that's captured correctly, amplified, and perpetuated. And where do we perpetuate that content? On different mediums. So we need to know what our content is, how it's being accessed, and what mediums is it being viewed, or is it addressing that emotional attachment on. So for example, there's a brand that's on YouTube, and I think it has over 470 million views. It was a brand that was created about a mouse. It's a black and white mouse. They built, I think, an amusement park here about that same content. But that mouse carries frequency. It's great content. They've perpetuated in so many ways. Although when they created the whistling mouse in the 40s, there was no such thing as YouTube. But yes, it's still one of the greatest viewed pieces of content that's still monetized today in a variety of different ways. So understand that you have to know where the content is, how it's being accessed, and what mediums you're going to perpetuate it on. The last piece is the whole world is a stage. What has happened today, whether you're addressing your frequency in person, on the phone, via email, or all media, radio, print, TV, and social media, the world is a stage. So coming from the sports business, I used to sell $1 million sign rights on a stadium so that the hundreds of thousands of people that could view that, whether they're driving by, whether they're in the stadium or even on TV, would see that and get brand recognition. Today, that's nothing, right? I'd rather go ahead and take a $600 camera, film my sign, amplify it and perpetuate it to 23 million people a day, 230 million people. If you have the right frequency, if you use the idea that people buy on emotion for logical reasons. Everything is your stage. Right? Everything's your stage. You can be your own content. In fact, I went and progressed in my business where I ran the most notable sports agency in the world called Leigh Steinberg Sports Entertainment. The movie Jerry Maguire was made off. I would use my athletes, Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield, all the great baseball and football players in the world, to attract people to do business with traditional methods, in person, on the phone, in stadiums. Now, it then moved to my business partner, and now I use myself. This is terrific to have an entirely sold-out crowd listening to me speak, but the real value of this to me is this wonderful stage, all this great branding that millions of people are going to see on my Instagram, on my YouTube, on my LinkedIn, and it's perpetual. Right? Every single one of you that never heard of David Meltzer, at David Meltzer, hopefully will follow me and then see every single video that I've done over the last 3 years. When I focused in on acceleration and exponential growth, when I told my company the biggest fear I had because of the frequency that we carry, because of our idea of branding, of amplifying and perpetuating content, that my biggest fear was everything was going to break. And they looked at me when I had 200 followers and said, "Are you kidding? You're like 50 years old, man. No one's going to watch you." Well, things are breaking in my life right now because exponentially it went from, the first year 25% to a half a year later 50%, to a quarter a year later 100%, to an eighth of a year later 200%, to a 16th of a year 400, and now we're filling stadiums and arenas and traveling the entire world using this content to accelerate and grow our business. And you can do, look, if I can do that with this brand, right, think about what you could do with your great idea. It's much better looking than this, I promise you. So we want to focus in on one thing. Although it gets complex, although it seems too big, focus in on that first customer. What is that frequency? How am I going to connect emotionally to them? Energy and motion, emotionally to them. The logical reasons, the quantitative impact, the quantitative capabilities will all be provided once you connect emotionally. And you can do that very simply, very strategically, and very inexpensively, because that content will speak for itself. After you see what content has the right frequency and connect emotionally, then spend the marketing dollars to amplify it, accelerate it, and perpetuate it. Everyone can have a brand. Everyone can be excited. Don't forget, there's a million great ideas out there, but it's the people that know how to monetize them that really do well in business. Thank you so much for your time.